It's 100 days since Rodrigo Duterte took his oath as the 16th president of the Philippines. Almost 4,000 people have been killed in the president's war on drugs. He has drawn widespread international criticism for these deaths, but he continues to be highly popular here at home. The president enjoys a record high trust rating. We talked to sociologist Nicole Curato about the high trust rating and the reasons behind it.
Well, there are a lot of reasons, and we can see this just starting from the elections. And one of the things that I studied over the course of the campaign is how the president was very effective in tapping on what I call a latent anxiety. And that anxiety is coming from a lot of issues that people face, but we tend to forget because it's not obvious. Drugs and criminality is the very obvious manifestation of that.
So you're saying that that was what really the people wanted to solve?
Yes, actually when I was doing my fieldwork in Tacloban over the course of 2 years, I didn't really pay attention when people were saying that there are lots of drug addicts here and it's one of the main issues we face every day. I tend to just, okay, that's a problem. We gloss it over. But when I reviewed my transcripts after Duterte won, I realized that, hang on a minute, people are actually complaining about this already. It's just that we feel it's normal.
Yeah, so it's something you yourself even ignored, hearing it from the people themselves.
Exactly. So I feel guilty as an academic not to have been able to spot this right away. And I think that's also the case for a lot of people in government. We think it's normal, we think it's an everyday issue. What President Duterte did was he politicized it. He made it an issue that's something that the government should directly address, because normally it's an issue that the barangay addresses, sometimes the church.
But not on a national scale.
Not on a national scale. So
And
he hit that.
And he hit it, well, yeah. And that was something that made people trust him at 91%. I'm going to repeat that because at 91% trust rating, he had 8% undecided and 0.5% of mistrust.
Right.
Have you ever seen anything like that?
Well, we can draw parallelisms from President Aquino. He started in the very high 80s, I think. And I don't think that's particularly surprising for a president who's just about to start the presidency. And it's also not surprising because he won a landslide victory, right?
Okay.
So it's really just reinforcing those preferences that we saw during the election.
I just wanted to bring this in because I think Pinoy then had a trust rating of 85%.
Right.
So 85% again vis-a-vis 91%. That's still quite a gap.
Right. But that was a bit more contentious elections, right? And for President Duterte, you don't only see a very high trust rating, but a very committed set of supporters. Of course, that doesn't necessarily reflect in the polls because you only have one person, one poll number, right? Yeah. But the intensity really builds into this whole narrative that this is a very popular president that you should not cross, as we are starting to find out with the criticisms of Senator De Lima, as one of the opposition senators.
That's right. But I just want to get back first to what is described as a honeymoon period.
Right.
Is this still the honeymoon period for President Duterte, knowing that he's about maybe 100 days into office, a little less than that?
Right. I think that's a fair period of time, and all presidents do have that honeymoon period. But I think for his supporters, it's not necessarily the case of just holding back the critique just because the administration is just about to start. What I'm increasingly starting to learn here is that the people give him unqualified support because our paradigm now is we're at war. This is a war. So if you try to remember, let's say in the US, when they attacked Iraq, when they attacked Afghanistan, there are some ways in which people are silenced when they critique it. They will say it's unpatriotic, it's disrespectful to the troops. So in a way, there's a parallelism here. You have your police officers putting their lives on the line, and then you start critiquing them. You don't do that, right? So that's the sentiment I get, and it's only dawned on me recently.
Yeah.
That's why the intensity is there. We are at war.
Yeah, you were talking about the supporters a number of times during the interview. You have, how would you describe them? Loyal,
committed, fervent, unrelenting. And I think that's very important in the sense that when you have a government, you don't only look at the people in government. You're looking at the public that underpins the policy of the government, especially if the issue is drugs. Because again, this is not just a public issue, it's a very private issue. And we expect families, we expect friends to be able to police each other to make sure that the war on drugs succeed. So in a way, public support is very important in this war.
Okay, but the president is known for his gutter language. Okay,
Right.
I want to look into the effect of the kind of style, this language of the president compared to his supporters. Is this gutter language of President Duterte something that is acceptable to most of his followers?
I think it's part of the package, in a way. When people elected him in office, we knew that he is like that. And he's not the first popular president who is using gutter language. I remember Hugo Chavez in Venezuela. International press has really pushed Hugo Chavez and demonized him because of his language. I remember when he talked in the United Nations, he called President Bush the devil. He said, I can still smell sulfur here. So it's not the first time we're seeing a head of state who is incredibly popular from his home country but has gained international notoriety for that gutter language. But the reason why it's accepted is because it's part of his narrative. His narrative is, I will stand up for you, I will fight against bullies, and this is how I do that. It's a coarse political language, but it's very much part of the story of being a strong leader.
But what is the effect of that to the public in general? For example, is this something that the public would think is okay and something that they can emulate?
Right, and I think that's been one of the more popular analyses that we hear, right? The tone from the top matters, and whatever the tone from the top is, it transcends, it translates to the public sphere. And in a way, we see that in online discussions, right? We see people really just being nasty against Senator De Lima, mimicking what the president is saying. Mm-hmm. But I guess my appeal here would be, if we are talking like this or treating each other in this manner in social media, we have to address that filter. Do we talk to each other in the same manner in person? Mm-hmm. So I guess this is an appeal to more or less engage in a proper conversation. Even if the president has that kind of gutter language, we still are responsible for each other as citizens in terms of how we talk to each other.
And the president said that very recently. He said that don't blame the media.
Right.
Remember, he was calling on his supporters to be a little bit more calm.
That's right. And they did the same thing during the elections. Because I think the use of language is very strategic. It's gutter language for a reason. So in a way, if his supporters are just doing that to basically express frustration or demonize a particular politician, we always have to ask the question, what's the end game?
Yeah.
How does it contribute to our democracy when we say these things?
Nicole, thanks a lot.
Thank you.